Ambassador Adrian Cole had attended 17 diplomatic receptions during the peace summit with the Krithar Empire, and none of them had involved him personally being summoned by an alien queen. So when the Krithar guard approached him mid-conversation and announced that Queen Vashara Kren requested his immediate presence, his first thought was that he'd committed some cultural faux pas that was about to become an interstellar incident. Now, Adrian managed, glancing at his senior colleagues. "I'm just a mid-level observer. Surely she means the head ambassador." Queen Vashara specified Ambassador Adrian Cole, the guard repeated, his tone suggesting refusal wasn't an option. "You will come immediately." The head of the human delegation, Ambassador Chen, looked as confused as Adrian felt but gave him an urgent nod. "Go. Be respectful, be honest, and for God's sake don't agree to anything binding without consulting us first." Adrian followed the guard through corridors that became progressively less public and more private, his diplomatic training warring with pure anxiety. The Krithar were not hostile to humanity, but they were a warrior species with military capabilities that made everyone nervous. Their empire had existed for millennia, built through conquest and maintained through absolute monarchical authority. You didn't refuse their queen lightly. The private chamber he was led to looked less like a throne room and more like a war council headquarters. Queen Vashara sat on a throne that appeared to be forged from starship hull plating, and she was exactly as intimidating as every briefing suggested. Easily 8 feet tall, heavily muscled, with amber predator eyes and scars crossing her arms and shoulders. She wore armor that was both ceremonial and probably still functional, and when those amber eyes fixed on Adrian, he felt like prey being assessed. Standing to the side, looking distinctly uncomfortable, was a younger Krithar woman who had to be the princess. She was tall but less imposing than her mother, with similar amber eyes and an expression that clearly read, "I would rather be literally anywhere else." "Ambassador Adrian Cole," Queen Vashara said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made you straighten your spine without thinking. "You have been observed during these proceedings. You demonstrate intelligence, diplomatic skill, and appropriate restraint. You are also unmarried and within reproductive viability range." Adrian's brain stuttered completely. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am not complimenting you. I am stating facts relevant to my decision." The queen stood, and the movement was like watching a mountain shift. Her presence filled the room, dominating everything. Humanity and the Krithar Empire stand at a crossroads. We can become allies, enemies, or remain strangers. Alliances forged through treaty alone are fragile, paper that dissolves when convenient. But alliances sealed through blood, through family, endure across generations. Adrian felt dread building as he began to understand where this was going. "Your Majesty, if you're suggesting some kind of symbolic, you will marry my daughter, Crown Princess Zarya Kren." The queen interrupted, her tone making clear this was not a request or a suggestion. "You will provide strong grandchildren to bind our peoples together. The union will create investment neither government can sever without abandoning their own bloodline. The announcement will be made at tomorrow's summit conclusion. Preparations will begin immediately." The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian stared at Queen Vashara, certain he'd misheard or that his translator was malfunctioning. The princess, Zarya, had her eyes closed like she was praying for patience or possibly for the floor to open and swallow her. 2 advisors flanking the queen watched Adrian with expressions suggesting they were already calculating how to explain this to humanity's government if he refused. "Your Majesty," Adrian said carefully, desperately trying to find diplomatic language for absolutely not. "I'm deeply honored by this proposal, but arranged marriages aren't part of human diplomatic tradition. I can't simply agree to." "You will marry my daughter," Queen Vashara repeated, and there was steel in her voice now, the tone of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "This is not negotiation, Ambassador Cole. This is royal decree." Your government will be formally notified through proper channels. The ceremony will occur within the lunar cycle. Preparations will account for human customs where practical, but the outcome is not subject to debate. She sat back on her throne, a clear dismissal. Guards moved toward Adrian to escort him out, but Princess Zarya finally spoke, her voice surprisingly soft for someone from a warrior species. Mother, perhaps we should at least discuss. The decision is made, Zarya. You will meet with Ambassador Cole tomorrow morning to begin cultural orientation and compatibility assessment. Both of you are dismissed. There was no arguing with that tone. Adrian was escorted out, his mind reeling, barely processing the corridors he was led through. When he returned to the human delegation's quarters, his colleagues mobbed him immediately. What did she want? Ambassador Chen demanded. You look like you've seen a ghost. She ordered me to marry her daughter, Adrian said, and even saying it aloud didn't make it feel real. To create alliance through bloodline. She was very clear it's not negotiable. The room erupted. Chen looked pale. She what? You can't just, we don't have protocols for, this is completely outside diplomatic framework. I'm aware, Adrian said, sinking into a chair. She mentioned announcing it at tomorrow's summit conclusion, as a done deal. Can she do that, force you into marriage with royal decree? That was from Morgan, the delegation's legal specialist. In Krithar culture, royal decrees from the monarch are absolute law. Another diplomat supplied, frantically scrolling through cultural briefings on her datapad. Refusing would be interpreted as direct insult to the crown, which could jeopardize not just you but our entire delegation's safety. So I'm trapped, Adrian said flatly. We need to contact Earth immediately, Chen decided. Get guidance from the highest levels. And someone find everything we have on Krithar marriage customs, royal succession laws, and ideally how to politely refuse a queen who looks like she could bench press a spacecraft. The rest of the evening was chaos. Urgent messages to Earth, frantic research into Krithar customs, and Adrian sitting in the center of it, all trying to process that his diplomatic career had just taken the most bizarre turn imaginable. He was being forced into arranged marriage with an alien princess, by a queen who apparently viewed personal autonomy as an inconvenient obstacle to strategic planning. Late that night, lying awake in his quarters, Adrian pulled up what information existed about Princess Zarya. There wasn't much. She was crown princess, first in succession, had military training as expected for Krithar royalty, and had apparently also pursued scholarly studies in governance and interspecies relations. The few images showed her in formal settings, always composed, always maintaining the dignified bearing expected of royalty. She'd looked absolutely mortified in that chamber when her mother announced the decree. That was something, at least. She hadn't chosen this either. They were both caught in Queen Vashara's political maneuvering. Adrian's final thought before exhaustion claimed him was wondering what Princess Zarya was thinking right now. Was she as horrified as he was, furious with her mother, resigned to duty? In her own quarters across the diplomatic ship, Princess Zarya was indeed awake, pacing her chambers with barely controlled frustration. She'd known her mother was planning something. Queen Vashara had been unusually secretive about her summit strategy. But forcing Zarya into marriage with a human ambassador without even discussing it first was high-handed even by her mother's standards. The worst part was that Zarya understood the strategic logic. Blood alliances were more binding than treaties. Grandchildren carrying both Krithar and human genetics would create investment impossible to sever through political convenience. It was brilliant strategy that happened to treat Zarya and this unfortunate human as breeding stock rather than people. She thought about Ambassador Cole's expression, shock and dismay poorly concealed under diplomatic training. He tried to refuse as politely as possible, which showed more courage than most beings demonstrated in her mother's presence. That was something. Tomorrow they'd meet for cultural orientation, which would be awkward beyond description. two strangers forced into engagement, expected to build some kind of relationship that satisfied a queen's political goals while navigating the disaster of their situation. Zarya sighed, finally lying down, though she knew sleep wouldn't come easily. Her mother had made her decree. Now they'd all have to live with the consequences. Though Zarya suspected those consequences would be far more complicated than even Queen Vashara anticipated. Adrian and Zarya, in separate quarters, both stared at ceilings and wondered the same thing. How do you build anything real when it starts with royal decree and political necessity? They'd find out tomorrow, whether they wanted to or not. Adrian woke to an urgent message on his datapad. Princess Zarya requests your presence for cultural orientation. 800 hours. Training Facility Section 7. The message was formal, but something about the wording suggested it might be more emergency strategy session than official orientation. He arrived at the training facility, because apparently even diplomatic discussions happened in spaces designed for combat in Krithar culture, to find Princess Zarya there, but not in formal royal attire. She wore training gear and was in the middle of a weapons form with a blade that looked like it could cut through starship hulls. She moved with extraordinary skill, each motion precise and controlled, and Adrian found himself watching with genuine appreciation for the artistry involved. When she noticed him, she completed the form, sheathed the blade, and approached. Up close, she was less imposing than her mother, but still tall by human standards, probably 6.5 feet. Her skin had that slight scaled texture common to Krithar, and it was currently showing hints of blue, which Adrian's hasty research suggested indicated stress or discomfort. "Ambassador Cole," she said formally. Then she glanced around to ensure no guards were within earshot, and her posture shifted slightly, becoming less rigid. "I apologize for this situation. My mother did not consult me before making her announcement. This is not how I would have chosen to meet you." Relief flooded through Adrian. "You didn't know? I thought this was some Krithar tradition I didn't understand." "It is a tradition, but a very old one. Royal marriages arranged for political alliance. Usually both parties are at least informed before the public declaration." Her frustration was evident in her tone and the blue deepening in her skin. "My mother has become increasingly focused on threats to the Empire. When she decides something is necessary for our survival, she simply makes it happen. Arguing is difficult. That seems like terrible parenting and worse political strategy." Zarya made a sound that was almost a laugh. "You don't know my mother. When she believes something serves the Empire, objections are viewed as obstacles to be overridden." She gestured to a bench along the wall. "Sit. We should talk honestly about this situation." They sat, and Adrian studied her more carefully. She was striking in a way that was distinctly alien but not unattractive. High cheekbones, those amber eyes that caught light beautifully, skin that shifted subtle colors based on emotion. Right now, the blue was fading slightly toward more neutral tones. "So what do we do?" Adrian asked. "My government sent guidance saying they can't force me to marry, but they're very interested in the alliance potential and strongly suggest I maintain positive relations with you." Which is diplomatic speak for don't refuse outright, but don't commit either. Krithar royal decrees are binding unless formally contested, which requires either proving the decree contradicts imperial law or demonstrating it would cause greater harm than benefit to the Empire. Zarya's voice was measured. "Refusing my mother directly would be interpreted as insult to the crown, which could jeopardize your entire delegation and certainly end any hope of alliance between our peoples. So we're trapped. We're constrained." She stood, pacing. "But perhaps there's a strategy. We cooperate with cultural orientation. We appear to be making genuine effort. We buy time for our respective governments to negotiate alternative alliance structures. If we openly refuse, my mother doubles down immediately. If we appear cooperative while moving slowly, perhaps we create space for better solutions." It was pragmatic and slightly manipulative, which Adrian appreciated from a diplomatic standpoint. You're suggesting we fake consideration of this marriage, while hoping the situation resolves itself. I'm suggesting we treat this as political challenge, rather than responding emotionally. My mother expects resistance she can override with authority. Strategic cooperation is harder to counter. Zarya looked at him directly. Unless you're absolutely opposed to spending time with me. I've been told I'm decent company, when not being used as political bargaining chip. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. You seem remarkably well-adjusted for someone whose mother just arranged her marriage to a complete stranger. This is not my first experience with my mother's high-handed political maneuvering. I've learned to adapt. She gestured toward the training area. Would you like to learn Krithar combat forms? Cultural orientation should include martial traditions, and it would give us legitimate reason to spend time together without constant supervision. I should warn you, I'm not exactly trained for combat. Then I'll teach you. Consider it building foundation for our alleged alliance through shared experience. There was amusement in her tone now. Also, you'll need basic defensive skills if you're going to survive Krithar social gatherings. We settle disputes through ritual combat. Your diplomatic immunity only extends so far. So Adrian spent the morning learning basic Krithar combat forms, which was humbling. Zarya was patient but exacting, and he quickly realized even her beginner techniques required strength and coordination he hadn't developed. But it was also surprisingly enjoyable. She was a good teacher, and once she relaxed slightly, her personality emerged. Sharp wit, observational humor, genuine passion for martial arts as both practical skill and artistic expression. During a break, they sat together drinking something that tasted like spiced tea, and Adrian asked the question bothering him. Why you specifically? Your mother must have other children, other ways to forge alliances. Why arrange your marriage? Zarya was quiet for a moment. I'm crown princess, first in succession. My marriage carries the most political weight. Also, I'm considered somewhat unconventional by Krithar standards. I pursued scholarly studies alongside martial training. I question traditions that don't serve practical purpose. My mother finds my perspectives both valuable and frustrating. So you're the difficult daughter being married off. More like the competent heir being strategically deployed for maximum political benefit. My mother doesn't punish through marriage, she optimizes. Zarya's skin shifted to warmer tones. She once told me she chose my father because he was the only warrior who defeated her in single combat. She respects competence. If she chose you, she sees something worth respecting. She saw that I'm unmarried and attended a summit. That's not exactly selective criteria. She saw more than that, or you wouldn't be here. My mother observes everything. Zarya stood, offering him a hand up. Come, tomorrow there's formal dinner where you'll be presented to court as my intended. You need to learn proper formal greetings, gesture language, and at least 3 ways to politely deflect challenges to ritual combat. 3 ways. Krithar nobles will test you. It's traditional. You need to refuse without giving insult. She led him toward another section of the facility. Also, we communicate as much through positioning and gesture as through words. Misunderstanding could be embarrassing or diplomatically disastrous. They spent hours on cultural immersion, formal greetings, gesture language that required precise hand and body positioning, the complex social hierarchies governing every interaction. Zarya was thorough and patient, and Adrian realized she was genuinely trying to help him navigate an impossible situation. As the day ended, Adrian had learned more about Krithar culture than weeks of briefings provided. He'd also learned that Zarya was intelligent, funny when she allowed herself to be, and dealing with her own frustrations about being treated as political asset. Thank you, he said, as guards arrived to escort him back to human quarters. For today, for not treating this like it's my fault. It's not your fault. It's my mother's characteristic approach to complex problems. Identify solution, Implement immediately, handle objections later. Zarya's expression softened. Adrian, I meant what I said earlier. We buy time through cooperation, and perhaps we find solution that satisfies alliance goals without requiring actual marriage. Unless, unless, unless we discover we don't actually object to the arrangement. Stranger things have happened. She said it lightly, but something in her expression suggested curiosity about that possibility. Adrian returned to find his delegation still in crisis mode. Earth's response had arrived. They couldn't force him to marry, but they were very interested in the alliance and strongly suggested he explore the possibility while maintaining appropriate boundaries. That night, lying awake again, Adrian thought about Zarya, her competence, her humor, the way she treated an absurd situation with pragmatism. He thought about her mother's mention of binding alliances through blood, and he thought that maybe buying time through cultural orientation wasn't the worst strategy, even if it meant spending more time with a princess who was turning out to be genuinely interesting, which might complicate his intention to avoid this arrangement. In her quarters, Zarya was thinking similar thoughts. The human ambassador was different from what she'd expected. He asked questions instead of assuming he knew answers. He treated her as person rather than just princess. He had self-deprecating humor that translated surprisingly well. Spending 30 days learning about him wouldn't be the worst assignment she'd received. Even if it complicated her assumption they'd find a way out of this marriage. Both of them fell asleep thinking the same thing. This situation was absurd and impossible. But the person they'd been ordered to marry was at least tolerable company, which was more dangerous than either wanted to admit. The formal dinner was exactly as intimidating as Adrian feared. The Krithar court assembled in a hall that looked like Vikings and samurai had collaborated on aggressive interior design. All weapons displayed as art and rigid ceremonial structure. Adrian wore his best diplomatic attire, which felt inadequate next to warriors in ceremonial armor that was both decorative and probably still functional. Zarya appeared in full royal regalia, and Adrian barely recognized her. She was magnificent, armor and flowing fabric combined in ways suggesting both warrior and scholar, with royal insignia marking her status. Her skin had shifted to formal neutral tones, but when their eyes met across the hall, she gave him the tiniest nod of encouragement. The dinner proceeded with ritual precision. Adrian was formally presented to court as the human chosen to bind our empires through blood and future generations. The phrasing made him feel like prize breeding stock, but he maintained diplomatic composure. Queen Vashara presided with absolute authority, her presence dominating even in silence. As Zarya had predicted, challenges came. 3 different nobles approached with carefully worded suggestions that he demonstrate worthiness through ritual combat. Adrian used the deflection techniques Zarya taught him, acknowledging the honor while indicating his training focused on different traditions, offering instead to discuss strategy or diplomatic philosophy. 2 nobles accepted gracefully. The third looked disappointed but backed down when Zarya herself intervened. "Understanding my intended's mind is more valuable than testing his blade arm," she said, her tone formal but with subtle amusement underneath. "I can assess physical prowess myself." The statement was ambiguous enough to be proper but suggestive enough to make several nobles chuckle. Adrian caught her tiny smirk and realized she was enjoying disrupting formal court expectations. After dinner, Queen Vashara summoned them both privately. Her chambers were less formal than the throne room, filled with star charts and military strategic maps covering the walls. "Sit," she commanded. They sat. She studied them with those predator eyes. "You believe I'm forcing this marriage for simple political convenience. You're partially correct but fundamentally wrong about my reasoning." Zarya straightened. "Mother, if you would explain your actual strategy." "I will explain now, because you both need to understand what you're preventing." Vashara pulled up holographic displays showing territorial maps. 3 major empires border our space. 2 are currently aligned against us due to historical conflicts. If they coordinate, we face war on multiple fronts. We would prevail, but at catastrophic cost. Humanity is strategically positioned. Your territories create a buffer, and your technological approaches complement our military traditions. So this is strategic alliance, Adrian said. But why marriage specifically? Trade agreements and defense treaties would achieve. Treaties are paper. They dissolve when convenient. Vashara's voice was hard. But family is blood. Family endures. If my daughter bears children carrying both Krithar and human genetics, your government cannot abandon alliance without abandoning their own bloodline. My grandchildren become living embodiment of our bond, investment impossible to sever. The cold logic was undeniable, but Adrian felt resistance anyway. You're treating us as breeding stock for political purposes. I'm treating you as foundation for peace lasting generations. Vashara's expression softened microscopically. But there's more. Zarya, you know the prophecy of the distant stars. Zarya nodded slowly. The oracle's prediction from 3 centuries ago. When darkness rises from the void, only union of distant stars will forge strength to stand against the tide. Mother, that's mythology, ancient riddles that can mean anything. The oracles spoke truth wrapped in metaphor, Vashara countered. 2 months ago, our deep space monitoring detected anomalies at the galactic rim, energy signatures matching no known species, movement patterns suggesting coordination on unprecedented scales. Something is coming, Zarya, something that may threaten all civilizations in this region. Adrian felt cold wash through him. You think the prophet? Approximately, yes. Zarya sounded as stunned as he felt. My mother has a gift for making the impossible sound reasonable. Do you believe her about the prophecy and threat? Zarya was quiet. I believe she believes it. My mother doesn't make strategic decisions based on superstition. If she thinks the threat is real, it probably is. She stopped, facing him. Adrian, I know this is absurd. But perhaps my mother is right about one thing. We won't know if this could work unless we actually try. Not fake cooperation. Genuine attempt to understand each other. You're suggesting we actually court. I'm suggesting we treat the next 30 days as honest experiment. We spend time together. We learn about each other genuinely. We see if there's foundation for partnership. At the end, we make informed decision. Her expression was cautious but hopeful, unless you're absolutely opposed. Adrian thought about the Queen's warnings, about prophecies and threats, about Zarya herself. Her competence, her humor, the fact that she'd been remarkably decent about an impossible situation. 30 days, he agreed. Genuine effort, no guarantees but honest attempt. Agreed. Zarya extended her hand. They shook, human gesture meeting Krithar directness. Tomorrow we begin properly. I'll show you the royal archives. Past records of interspecies unions. Perhaps we learn from history. Over following days, they fell into rhythm. Mornings in combat training, Adrian's skills improving while Zarya enjoyed having a student who asked why about techniques. Afternoons in archives, discovering that interspecies unions in Krithar history were rare, but several were surprisingly successful. Evenings in conversation, discussing governance, sharing cultural stories, gradually learning each other's communication styles and preferences. Adrian discovered Zarya was passionate about education reform, believed Krithar's military focus neglected scientific advancement, and secretly loved ancient human literature she'd accessed through databases. Zarya learned Adrian chose diplomacy because he believed in solving conflicts through understanding, that he had self-deprecating humor that worked across species, and that he approached problems with creative flexibility rather than rigid planning. 15 days in, during evening conversation in gardens separating their quarters, Zarya asked, if circumstances were different, if we'd met through normal channels, would you have wanted to know me? Adrian considered carefully. Yes. You're one of the most interesting people I've met. The circumstances are terrible, but you yourself. That's actually good. Would you have wanted to know me? I would have found you intriguing. Your approach is so different from Krithar methods. It's refreshing. Her skin shifted to warm tones, genuine pleasure. I was prepared to resent you for being part of my mother's maneuvering, but you're making that difficult by being worth knowing. Is that a compliment? It's admission that this experiment might be working. She looked at him directly. Adrian, I can't promise I'll fall in love with you. Krithar don't form attachments as easily as humans. But I respect you, enjoy your company, and think we could build something functional. Is that enough? I don't know, Adrian answered honestly, but I'm willing to keep finding out. They sat together in comfortable silence, both aware they were approaching decision neither could avoid. The 30 days were passing faster than expected, and what began as strategic cooperation was becoming something genuine, which was terrifying for entirely different reasons than royal decrees and prophecies. 23 days in, territorial threats Queen Vashara mentioned escalated. One neighboring empire made aggressive incursions. Not into Krithar's space yet, but threatening enough that emergency strategic sessions interrupted normal summit activities. Adrian watched Zarya transform into crown princess during these sessions, offering military analysis with precision that reminded him she'd been trained for command since childhood. She was brilliant under pressure, respected by advisors twice her age, and absolutely in her element strategizing defense. Afterward, he found her in the training facility, working through weapon forms with intensity suggesting she processed stress through movement. Your mother's threat assessment was accurate, he said. It appears so. Zarya sheathed her blade, breathing hard, which means her solution may be necessary. Adrian, I need honesty. When this began, I thought we could avoid marriage. But we're running out of time. If we don't commit to this alliance, my people face war, and if prophecy is accurate, humanity faces worse. She sat heavily. But I won't force you. If you can't accept this, tell me now. I'll find another way. Adrian had been thinking about exactly this. He'd run through alternatives, considered every angle, and kept reaching one conclusion. He didn't actually want to refuse anymore. These 23 days have been strange, he said carefully. I was ordered to marry you by a queen treating personal autonomy as inconvenient obstacle. I should resent everything. He looked at Zarya. But I don't resent you. I care about you. Not because I have to, because I want to. And the idea of marrying you is less terrifying than the idea of leaving and never knowing what we could build. Zarya's skin shifted through colors, surprise, hope, caution. You're saying yes. I'm saying I'm willing if you are. Not because of prophecies, but because I think we could build something real. Maybe not traditional romance immediately, but partnership, genuine connection. He took her hand carefully. Your mother wanted alliance through blood. What if we give her that on our terms? We marry, build relationship at our pace, and prove strategic necessity can become something genuine. You want to marry me partly to spite my mother by proving her right for wrong reasons. I want to marry you because you've become someone I don't want to lose. Political benefits are bonus. He smiled. Also, yes, exceeding your mother's expectations sounds satisfying. Zarya laughed, genuine and delighted. You're either brave or insane. I'm choosing brave. Adrian squeezed her hand. But answer the same question, do you want this? Or are you agreeing from obligation? Zarya took a long breath. When my mother announced this, I was furious. At her presumption, at being treated as asset, at you for existing and complicating my life. But you're not what I expected. You ask questions instead of assuming answers. You treat me as person first and princess second. You make me laugh. Her skin warmed to copper gold. I don't know if this is love. Krithar don't conceptualize emotion like humans, but I respect you, trust you, want to continue knowing you. If that's enough, then yes, I want to marry you. It's enough, more than enough. They sat together until Zarya spoke again. We should tell my mother. On our terms, though. not obedience to decree but our choice. Tomorrow, at Summit's final session, we announce together, Adrian suggested. Not your mother proclaiming but us choosing. Symbols matter. Spoken like a diplomat, but she approved. Very well, we do this as partners. They informed Queen Vashara privately. Her reaction was characteristic. I knew you'd be compatible. The question was whether you'd recognize it in time. Then more gently, you've chosen wisely. This alliance will strengthen both peoples, and perhaps it will strengthen you as well. The final summit session was packed with dignitaries. Before Queen Vashara could make planned announcement, Adrian and Zarya stepped forward together. Representatives of Earth and the Krithar Empire, Adrian began. Princess Zarya and I have been engaged in cultural exchange to assess compatibility for alliance. What began as political arrangement has become genuine partnership, Zarya continued. We announce our decision to marry, not as obedience to decree, but as mutual choice. We forge alliance through family, through commitment to building something lasting. The announcement caused chaos. Surprised officials, delighted diplomats, and Queen Vashara watching with something almost like pride. Formal engagement proceeded with ceremony. Treaties were signed. Timelines established. Through it all, Adrian and Zarya stayed together, presenting unified front becoming more genuine and less performance. The chapter ends with them in shared quarters after the announcement, studying star charts showing the threat Queen Vashara mentioned. If the prophecy is real, our children face this, Zarya said softly. Union of distant stars, that's us made literal. No pressure then. Enormous pressure. But she smiled. However, if I must face apocalyptic prophecy, I'm glad it's with someone who treats alien royalty like people. And I'm glad it's with someone who could kill me but chooses to teach me proper technique instead. He wrapped arms around her, still cautious with affection but comfortable. For what it's worth, I'm happy. This started as nightmare scenario, but became the best thing that happened to me. I'm happy too. Zarya turned to face him. I don't know if this is what humans call love. But I want you beside me, in governance, facing threats, building whatever future comes. That feels significant. It's everything. They kissed, tentative, learning each other but genuine. Outside, two empires bound themselves through treaty. Inside, two people bound themselves through choice and growing affection prophecy predicted, but they created themselves. What began with royal decree was becoming something real. Exactly as Queen Vashara planned, though even she couldn't predict they'd care about each other genuinely. Some strategic plans exceed expectations. This was one of them. The wedding ceremony took place 3 months after the summit, held on the Krithar homeworld in a venue that combined martial grandeur with diplomatic elegance. Adrian stood in formal attire that blended human and Krithar traditions. Earth's diplomatic dress uniform, modified with Krithar ceremonial armor pieces that Zarya had personally selected. He felt ridiculous and magnificent simultaneously. Zarya appeared in bridal armor that was somehow both warrior regalia and elegant gown, flowing fabric interwoven with protective plating, royal insignia gleaming. Her skin displaying the warm copper gold that Adrian now recognized as genuine happiness. When their eyes met across the ceremonial space, she smiled, and Adrian felt his nervousness dissolve into certainty. They'd spent the past months navigating two governments' expectations, endless ceremonies, and genetic compatibility testing that made Adrian wish he'd paid more attention in biology classes. But through it all, they'd stayed partners, making decisions together, supporting each other through political pressure, and building something real from the arranged marriage that had started as nightmare scenario. Queen Vashara presided over the ceremony with satisfaction evident in her bearing. She'd successfully maneuvered her daughter into alliance, while somehow ending up with a son-in-law who actually respected and cared for Zarya. Adrian suspected she'd planned for political convenience and was pleasantly surprised by genuine affection developing. The vows combined both cultures, Krithar pledges of loyalty and strength with human promises of partnership and mutual support. When Adrian spoke his vows, he meant every word. I pledge to stand beside you, not behind or ahead, to build with you what neither of us could build alone, to face whatever comes with honesty, respect, and the terrible jokes you've learned to tolerate. That got laughs from both human and Krithar attendees. Zarya's vows were equally genuine. I pledge to see you as partner, not possession, to value your perspective even when it challenges mine, to build alliance not just between empires, but between two people choosing each other daily, and to continue teaching you proper combat form because your defensive stance still needs work. More laughter. The ceremony concluded with traditional Krithar blade exchange, symbolic sharing of strength, and human ring exchange representing unbroken commitment. They were pronounced married under both Krithar imperial law and Earth diplomatic recognition. The celebration afterward was chaotic fusion of cultures. Krithar warriors demonstrated combat forms while human diplomats awkwardly attempted to participate. Food from both worlds was served, some combinations surprisingly successful. Adrian watched Zarya navigate both groups effortlessly, translating between cultures literally and figuratively, and felt pride in his partner's competence. Late in the celebration, they managed to steal a moment alone in the gardens surrounding the ceremonial hall. Zarya pulled him into a secluded alcove, her skin glowing warm in the bioluminescent lighting. "We did it," she said. "We're actually married. My mother got her alliance, the prophecy begins its fulfillment, and somehow we ended up happy about it." "Your mother is terrifyingly good at strategic planning," Adrian agreed. "Though I doubt she predicted we'd actually fall for each other. I'm still not certain I understand human concept of falling in love," Zarya admitted. "But I know I want you with me always. I know thinking about you makes me feel warm, literally. My skin shifts to copper tones whenever you enter a room. I know I'm better with you than without you. Is that love?" "I think so. Or at least it's close enough that the distinction doesn't matter." Adrian pulled her closer. "I love you, Zarya. Not because your mother ordered it, not because prophecy predicted it, but because you're brilliant and funny and the best partner I could imagine for navigating impossible situations." "I love you too," Zarya said, testing the words. "It feels strange saying it. Krithar don't use that phrase casually, but with you it feels right." They kissed, no longer tentative or careful, but with the confidence of people who'd chosen each other repeatedly over 3 months. When they broke apart, Zarya's expression turned more serious. "Adrian, my mother showed me the latest deep space monitoring data. The anomalies are increasing. Whatever the prophecy warned about, it's coming faster than she anticipated. Within years, not decades. Then we prepare, together." Adrian squeezed her hand. "We build the alliance your mother wanted, but we make it real. Not just political treaty, but genuine cooperation between our peoples. We share technology, combine strategic approaches, create unity that will be ready when the threat arrives. And we have children," Zarya added quietly. "The grandchildren my mother demanded. Not immediately. We need time to be partners before becoming parents. But eventually. Children who carry both our genetics, who embody the union of distant stars the prophecy mentioned. You want children with me. I want to build future with you. Children are part of that future." Her skin shifted to deeper copper, indicating emotion human translation couldn't quite capture. "I want them to grow up in universe we make safer through our alliance. I want them to know their parents chose each other, not just for politics but for genuine connection." Adrian felt emotion tighten his throat. "Then that's what we do. We build the alliance, we prepare for whatever's coming, and when we're ready, we have children who will grow up knowing both cultures, who will be the living bridge your mother envisioned." They returned to the celebration eventually, but something had shifted. They weren't just married now, they were committed to future that extended beyond themselves, to children they'd have someday, to facing threats together, to proving that what began as royal decree could become foundation for something lasting. Weeks later, after official ceremonies concluded, and they'd settled into shared quarters on the Krithar flagship that would be their home base, Adrian found Zarya studying the same star charts showing anomaly readings. Worried? He asked. Determined, she corrected. Whatever's out there, we'll face it. You and I, our peoples, the children we'll have someday. The prophecy said union of distant stars would forge strength to stand against darkness. We're that union, Adrian. We're what our ancestors predicted and what our peoples need. No pressure, though. Enormous pressure. But she smiled. However, I've learned something these past months. Pressure is manageable when you have the right partner. And you're the right partner for me. Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind, both of them studying the star charts showing the galactic rim where darkness was slowly gathering. Whatever comes, we face it together. As partners. As husband and wife. As bridge between our peoples. Together, Zarya agreed, leaning back against him. Always together. Outside their quarters, two empires were bound by treaty and blood. Inside, two people were bound by choice and love that exceeded everyone's expectations, even a queen who specialized in exceeding expectations. The prophecy had spoken of union preventing darkness. Time would tell if Adrian and Zarya were truly the fulfillment of that ancient prediction. But regardless of prophecy, they'd proven something important. That arranged